Hello, story seekers, and welcome back to The Shadow File. I'm so glad you could join us. A huge thank you to everyone who engaged with last week's video. Your insights are truly what makes this community special. If you're new here and you're drawn to stories that explore the complexities and the hidden corners of the human heart, then you've found your home. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when we open a new file. Before we proceed, I must remind you that the story you are about to hear is a work of fiction. The names, characters, places, and incidents are products of the imagination. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. We often believe that the most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from others. But sometimes, the most destructive secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves, the fantasies we water and grow in the dark. Today, we open a file on a life that was torn apart by such a secret. It's a story about a quiet wife, her devoted husband, and an obsession with a man half a world away, an obsession that, when threatened, would curdle into a rage so potent it would end in murder. This is the story of how a secret love became a death warrant. Mira existed in a world painted in shades of beige and ochre, a world defined by the comforting, yet constricting, rhythms of tradition. Her life with Raj was a testament to this quiet predictability. Their marriage had been arranged by their parents, a sensible and well-regarded match between two respectable families. Raj was a good man, a deeply decent man, with a kind smile and hands calloused from his work as a civil engineer. He was steady and reliable, a solid foundation upon which a family could be built. He loved Mira in a way that was practical and sincere. He provided for her, he respected her, he spoke to her with a gentle deference. Their home, a modest but well-kept apartment in a bustling middle-class neighborhood, was a sanctuary of order and routine. Every morning, Mira would wake with the first light of dawn, the distant call to prayer a soft alarm. She would perform her morning rituals, her movements a practiced, graceful ballet of domesticity. She would prepare Raj's breakfast and pack his lunch, the aroma of cumin and coriander filling the small kitchen. He would eat, thank her with that same kind smile, and leave for work. Her day would then unfold in a series of prescribed tasks: cleaning the apartment until it was spotless, haggling for vegetables in the cacophony of the local market, preparing the evening meal, and waiting for Raj to return. Their evenings were spent in a comfortable, companionable silence, often punctuated by the blare of a television news program or the quiet rustle of Raj reading his newspaper. It was, by all measures, a good life, a stable life. And for Mira, it was a cage. The bars of this cage were not made of steel, but of 1,000 tiny, unspoken expectations. She was a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, a respected member of her community. She played her part to perfection, her smiles always gentle, her demeanor always compliant. But beneath this placid surface, a vast and restless ocean of yearning churned. She longed for a world she had only ever seen on screens, a world of vibrant color, of spontaneous romance, of personal freedom and passionate declarations. A world that was the very antithesis of her own. Her portal to this other world was her smartphone, a gift from Raj on their second anniversary. It was her secret window, her escape hatch. And it was through this window that she first saw him. His name was Alex Rider. He was a travel vlogger and social media influencer from California, and he was the living embodiment of everything Mira's life was not. He had sun-bleached blonde hair that fell boyishly over his forehead, eyes the color of a tropical sea, and a perpetually sun-kissed tan. He was always smiling, a wide, carefree grin that promised adventure and endless possibility. His life, as curated for his millions of followers, was a kaleidoscope of breathtaking landscapes and thrilling experiences. One day he was hiking through the misty mountains of Peru. The next he was surfing the turquoise waves of Bali. The day after he was laughing with friends around a bonfire on a beach in Thailand. He moved through the world with an effortless grace and an unshakable confidence that Mira found utterly intoxicating. He was a beautiful, shimmering mirage in the desert of her own existence. The obsession began slowly, an insidious vine creeping into the carefully tended garden of her life. It started with a simple follow. She would watch his short videos during the quiet afternoon hours, when the sun was high and the neighborhood was sleepy. His world was so loud, so vibrant, so full of life. It was a stark contrast to the muted silence of her apartment. Soon, she found herself thinking about him even when her phone was off. While grinding spices, she would wonder what Alex was having for breakfast. While hanging laundry on the balcony, she would imagine him looking out at a vast, blue ocean. Her quiet afternoons evolved into a secret, sacred ritual. She created a fake Instagram account, a ghost profile with no photos and a generic name, so she could follow him without leaving a trace. Through this anonymous persona, she delved deeper. She didn't just watch his new content. She went back years, meticulously studying his entire digital footprint. She learned the names of his friends, his favorite brand of coffee, the kind of music he listened to. She learned about his dog, a golden retriever named Bodhi. She learned that he had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood surfing accident. These trivial details were precious gems to her, the building blocks of a fantasy that was becoming more real, more tangible, than her own life. She began to construct a narrative, an elaborate and detailed daydream where she was a part of his world. In this secret life, she was not Mira, the dutiful wife from a respectable family. She was Mia, a free-spirited writer who had met Alex in a charming cafe in Paris. He had been captivated by her mysterious smile and her sharp wit. They had fallen into a whirlwind romance, traveling the world together. She imagined their conversations, their shared laughter, the feel of his hand in hers as they walked along a foreign shore. This fantasy world demanded offerings from the real one. She started to change subtly at first. She ordered an English-language novel that Alex had mentioned was his favorite. Raj had found it on the coffee table, a curious expression on his face. "Since when do you read English books, Mira?" he had asked, not with suspicion, but with genuine surprise. She had mumbled something about wanting to practice the language, and he had accepted it, pleased by her intellectual curiosity. She started experimenting with Western recipes she saw in Alex's videos, preparing pasta dishes and salads that Raj, with his traditional palate, found bland and unappetizing. "This is different," he would say, trying to be polite as he pushed a piece of lettuce around his plate. "But I think I prefer your mother's dal recipe." Each comment, however gentle, felt like a criticism not of her cooking, but of her dream. It was a reminder that Raj, in his simple goodness, was the gatekeeper of the world she was so desperate to escape. The digital obsession began to bleed into the physical world. She used a secret credit card, one she'd acquired without Raj's knowledge, to purchase items she felt would bring her closer to Alex. A bottle of the same expensive cologne he wore, which she would secretly dab on her pillow at night. A surfboard keychain, a silly trinket he sold as merchandise, which she kept hidden in the back of her jewelry box like a holy relic. She bought clothes she would never dare to wear outside the apartment, a pair of denim shorts, a simple white t-shirt, and would sometimes put them on when she was alone, standing in front of the mirror and trying to imagine herself on a Californian beach. The deception required a constant, exhausting vigilance. She became a master of clearing browser histories, of using incognito modes, of angling her phone away from Raj's line of sight. The phone, which had once been a simple tool, was now a sacred object, a reliquary containing her real life. She guarded it with a fierce, primal jealousy. If Raj even casually picked it up to check the time, a jolt of pure panic would course through her. Raj, for his part, began to notice a shift in the atmosphere of their home. It was nothing he could put his finger on, just a subtle, pervasive change. The comfortable silence between them now felt strained, filled with an unspoken distance. Mira was physically present, but her mind was often 1,000 miles away. He would speak to her, and she would startle, as if being pulled from a deep trance. Her smiles seemed more brittle, her laughter less frequent. He attributed it to a general malaise, perhaps a loneliness or a quiet dissatisfaction with her life as a homemaker. He was a man of solutions. He suggested she take up a hobby, perhaps a painting class or a sewing circle with the other wives in the building. It would be good for you to get out, to have something of your own, he had said, his intentions pure. Mira had looked at him with an expression he couldn't decipher, an odd mix of pity and resentment. I'm fine, Raj, she had replied, her voice cool. I have plenty to keep me busy. The first real crack in Mira's secret world appeared on a sweltering Tuesday evening. Raj had come home early, a rare occurrence, hoping to surprise her. He walked into the apartment quietly and found Mira in the living room, her back to him. She was on her phone as usual, but this time she had headphones in and was speaking softly in English. Oh, Alex, that looks so amazing, she was whispering, a giddy, girlish tone in her voice that he hadn't heard in years. You're so brave. I wish I could be there with you. Raj froze in the doorway, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. Alex? Who was Alex? His mind immediately leaped to the most obvious and most painful conclusion. She was having an affair. She was talking to another man. The thought was a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. He must have made a sound, a small, involuntary gasp, because Mira spun around, her eyes wide with panic. She ripped the headphones from her ears, her hand flying to her chest. She saw him standing there, his face a canvas of hurt and confusion, and the color drained from hers. Raj! She exclaimed, her voice shrill. You're home early. I didn't hear you. Who is Alex? He asked, his voice low and strained. The panic in Mira's eyes was quickly replaced by a defensive anger. It's nothing, she snapped, clutching the phone to her chest like a shield. It's just a show I was watching. A travel show. It was a lie and they both knew it. The intimacy in her tone, the use of a first name. It wasn't how one spoke to a television program. Raj didn't push. He was not a confrontational man, and the thought of what he might uncover terrified him. But the seed of suspicion had been planted. It was a tiny, poisonous seed, but he knew with a dreadful certainty that it had taken root in the foundation of their marriage. He looked at his wife, the woman he had known for years, and felt a chilling, unnerving sensation. He didn't know her at all. He was living with a stranger, and that night, for the first time, he lay awake long after her breathing had evened out into sleep, staring at the silhouette of the phone on her nightstand, a dark monolith that held a secret he was now terrified to uncover. The weeks following the incident in the living room were a quiet, undeclared war. The comfortable routines of Mira and Raj's life remained on the surface, a fragile crust over a churning volcano of suspicion and deception. Raj was haunted by the name Alex. It echoed in the silence between them, a ghost at their dinner table. He found himself watching Mira with a pained, forensic intensity, cataloging every furtive glance at her phone, every long, unexplained moment she spent locked in the bathroom, every sigh that seemed to come from a place of deep, secret longing. He was a man adrift, his solid, predictable world knocked from its axis. His initial fear of a conventional affair began to give way to a deeper, more unsettling confusion. Mira wasn't behaving like a woman meeting a lover. She never left the house at odd hours. There were no mysterious phone calls that she had to take in another room. Her secret life seemed to exist entirely within the glowing 4-inch screen of her phone. This was a betrayal of a kind he couldn't comprehend, a modern malady for which his traditional understanding of love and marriage had no framework. He tried to breach the wall she had built between them. He would suggest they go for a walk after dinner, or visit family on the weekend, any activity that would pull her away from the phone and back into their shared reality. Let's leave our phones at home, Mira, he suggested one evening. Let's just talk, like we used to. Mira's reaction was not just dismissive. It was violently defensive. Why? Why are you so obsessed with my phone? She had retorted, her eyes flashing with a cold fire he had never seen before. Is a woman not allowed a little privacy? I do everything for you, for this house. Can I not have this one small thing for myself? The accusation of his obsession with her phone was so grotesquely ironic that Raj was left speechless. He retreated, wounded. He realized that any direct attempt to reclaim her was futile. She was a fortress, and her phone was the gatehouse. To understand what was happening to his wife, to his marriage, he knew he would have to breach it. The thought of violating her privacy filled him with a profound sense of shame, but the fear of the unknown was greater. Mira, meanwhile, was spiraling deeper into her fantasy. Raj's suspicion was not a wake-up call. It was a catalyst. He was no longer just a feature of her mundane reality. He was becoming the antagonist in her secret one. He was the warden, the obstacle keeping her from Alex, her soulmate, the only person who truly understood her. Her time in Alex's world became more frantic, more desperate. She began to believe, with a chilling, delusional certainty, that her connection with him was real. Alex had posted a video from Greece, talking about feeling a strange sense of loneliness despite being surrounded by beauty. "Sometimes you just feel like there's someone out there you're supposed to meet," he had said, speaking to his millions of followers. Mira had watched this, tears streaming down her face, convinced that he was speaking directly to her. He felt her absence, just as she felt his. She took a dangerous step. From her anonymous account, she began to send him direct messages. They were long, rambling monologues, filled with her deepest feelings, her frustrations with her life, her adoration for him. "You've saved me, Alex," she wrote in one. "You've shown me that there's a world of color and life out there. My life here is so gray. I feel like I'm a bird in a cage, and you are the key." Of course, Alex never replied. Her messages were a single drop of rain in the torrential downpour of his daily notifications. But in Mira's mind, his silence was not a rejection. He was busy. He was traveling. Or perhaps he was being discreet, protecting her. The delusion was self-sustaining, a closed loop of logic that reality could not penetrate. The breaking point for Raj came late one Saturday night. They had had a tense, almost silent dinner. Mira had spent the entire meal with her phone on her lap, subtly scrolling below the level of the table. The sheer disrespect of it, the blatant dismissal of his presence, was a final, painful straw. That night, he waited until he was certain she was in a deep sleep. His heart hammered against his ribs, his hands slick with a nervous sweat. He felt like a common thief, a trespasser in his own home, in his own marriage. He gently lifted the phone from her nightstand. He had, on several occasions, seen her type in her Pascodia simple pattern lock. His fingers trembled as he drew the shape on the screen. It unlocked. He took a deep, shuddering breath and opened the gallery. The first few photos were normal, pictures of family, of food, of scenery from their last trip to the mountains. And then it began. There were hundreds, no, thousands of screenshots. All of them were of the same man. The man from the living room. Alex. Alex on a beach. Alex on a mountain. Alex laughing. Alex sleeping. Alex eating. It was a digital shrine. A terrifying, obsessive collage of a stranger's life. His hands shaking, Raj opened her social media app. He found the fake account, the one she used to watch the world. And then he found the messages. He read them, one after another, his blood turning to ice in his veins. He read his wife's secret heart, poured out for a man on a screen. He read of her loneliness, her dreams of escape, her declarations of love. He read about how she felt trapped, how her life with him was a gray cage. The pain was immense, a physical agony that bent him in half. But it was quickly consumed by a profound, chilling horror. This was not a simple affair. This was a form of madness. His wife was in love not with a man, but with a ghost, a fantasy she had built from pictures and videos. The betrayal was so complete, so bizarre, that he felt a sense of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him. He was not just a husband who had been cheated on. He was a man whose entire reality had been a lie. The woman sleeping peacefully in his bed was a stranger, living a life he had no part in, a life where he was the villain. He put the phone back on the nightstand, his movements stiff and robotic. He did not sleep. He sat in the dark, the words from the messages burning behind his eyes, until the first gray light of dawn broke the horizon. The confrontation was quiet, almost eerily so. There was no shouting, no screaming. The truth was too monstrous for that. He waited until she was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her morning tea. He sat down opposite her, his face a grim, exhausted mask. "I know, Mira," he said, his voice flat and dead. "I know everything." She looked at him, her eyes wide with a flicker of confusion before it was replaced by a dawning horror. She knew. She knew he had seen. "I know about Alex Rider," he continued, the name tasting like poison in his mouth. "I read the messages. I saw the pictures. All of it." For a moment, Mira seemed to crumble, her face contorted with shame and fear. But then, something shifted. The shame was burned away by a sudden, defiant rage. The cornered animal does not apologize. It attacks. "You went through my phone?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "You violated my privacy? Your privacy?" Raj's voice cracked, a single, sharp note of anguish cutting through his composure. "You have been living a secret life. You have built a shrine to a man you have never met. You are sick, Mira. You need help." "I am not sick," she shrieked, standing up so abruptly that her chair clattered to the floor. "I am in love. Something you would never understand. I have a connection with him. He sees me, the real me, not just a cook and a cleaner. He is a picture on a screen." Raj shouted back, finally losing control. He stood to face her, his hands clenched into fists. "He doesn't know you exist. This is a delusion, a fantasy." Every word he spoke was a truth she could not bear to hear. A hammer blow to the beautiful, fragile glass palace she had built for herself. And in that moment, she hated him for it. She hated him with a terrifying, absolute purity. He was not just a man who didn't understand. He was the enemy, the one who was trying to destroy her one true source of happiness. "I'm going to talk to your father," Raj said, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and desperate concern. "We are going to get you help. I will not let you throw your life away on this madness. I'll take away the phone. I'll take away the internet. We will fix this." It was meant as an ultimatum born of love, a desperate attempt to pull his wife back from the brink. But that is not what Mira heard. She heard a threat of total annihilation. He was going to take Alex away from her. He was going to lock her back in the cage, but this time he would seal the window. He was going to tell her family, to shame her, to expose her secret soul to the world. He was going to kill the only part of her that felt alive. She looked at Raj, at his kind, worried face, now contorted with pain. She looked at the man who had been her husband, who had provided for her and protected her. And she saw a monster. She saw a jailer. She saw the one thing that stood between her and her fantasy. The one obstacle that had to be removed. The rage and panic in her mind coalesced into a single, cold, clear thought, as sharp and as deadly as a shard of ice. If Raj exposed her secret love, he would be destroying her life. So, she would have to destroy his first. The thought was not born of hatred for Raj the man, but of a desperate, primal need to protect her fantasy. The unveiling had not brought clarity. It had brought a death sentence. And as she looked into her husband's eyes, her expression became terrifyingly calm. The decision had been made. In the chilling silence that followed the confrontation, a profound and terrible transformation occurred within Mira. The frantic, daydreaming woman was gone, replaced by something cold, sharp, and purposeful. Her fantasy life was no longer a passive escape. It was a reality worth killing for. Raj, in his desperate attempt to save her, had unknowingly signed his own death warrant. He had become the dragon guarding the gate to her fairy tale, and her mind, now stripped of all reason and morality, had decided the dragon must be slain. Her movements in the days that followed were a masterpiece of deception. She feigned remorse. She cried. She apologized. She told Raj that he was right, that she had been foolish and lost. She promised to delete the accounts, to stop her obsessive behavior, to focus on their marriage. She begged him not to speak to her father, promising she would do anything to make things right. Raj, a good man who wanted to believe in the goodness of his wife, was flooded with relief. He saw her tears not as a manipulation, but as a sign of a breakthrough. He saw her promises as the first steps toward healing. He agreed to keep her secret, to give her a chance to fix what was broken. He felt a surge of protective love for this fragile, confused woman. He had gotten his wife back. This misplaced faith would be his fatal mistake. While Mira performed the role of the penitent wife, a darker, more methodical part of her was meticulously planning. The idea of murder, once an unthinkable horror, now presented itself as a simple, logical solution. Her primary concern was not one of morals, but of logistics. It had to be clean, untraceable. It had to look natural. Her mind, which for months had been consumed with the details of a stranger's life, now turned that same obsessive focus to the art of poison. She spent hours, late at night, after Raj was asleep, using the incognito browser on her phone to research. She read about toxins, symptoms, and, most importantly, about poisons that were difficult to detect in a standard autopsy. And it was in the digital pages of a botanical website that she found her weapon. Nerium oleander, the Caner flower. It was perfect. The plant was ubiquitous in their region, a common ornamental shrub with beautiful, fragrant blossoms of pink and white. It grew in parks, along roadsides, and even in the small, communal garden of their apartment complex. Every part of the plant, the leaves, the flowers, the stems, was lethally toxic, containing potent cardiac glycosides that could disrupt the rhythm of the heart, mimicking the symptoms of a massive, sudden heart attack. It was a poison that grew in plain sight, a beautiful, deadly secret hidden in the everyday landscape. Her plan formed with a chilling clarity. She would grind the dried leaves of the oleander into a fine, bitter powder. She would then mix this powder into a strongly flavored dish, something that would mask the taste. Raj loved her special Sunday goat curry, a rich, spicy dish that was heavy with a complex blend of garam masala, ginger, and garlic. The powerful flavors would be the perfect Trojan horse for the poison. The following Saturday, while Raj was out running errands, Mira took a small pair of scissors and a plastic bag and went down to the communal garden. She moved with a calm, deliberate purpose, just another housewife enjoying the afternoon sun. She found a large, healthy oleander shrub near the back wall and carefully snipped a handful of its dark green, leathery leaves. Back in the apartment, she laid them out on a newspaper in the sun on their small utility balcony to dry, hidden behind a rack of laundry. That evening, she was the picture of the reformed, loving wife. She suggested they watch a movie together, one of Raj's favorites. She made his favorite snacks. She rested her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, his heart swelling with hope. He felt the warmth of her body against his and believed it was the return of an old intimacy. He was oblivious to the fact that he was embracing his executioner. On Sunday, the day of the planned murder, Mira woke with a sense of calm, almost serene, resolve. She went about her morning routine, her movements fluid and unhurried. She told Raj she was making his favorite curry as a special thank you for his patience and forgiveness, a peace offering to mark the beginning of their new chapter. He was touched, his kind face beaming with a love that should have shattered her, but it did not. In her mind, this man was already a ghost. As she prepared the ingredients, the final, crucial component lay waiting on her kitchen counter. The oleander leaves, now dry and brittle, were ground into a fine, greenish-brown powder using the same mortar and pestle she used for her daily spices. The act was a grotesque parody of her domestic duties. The tools she used to create meals that sustained his life were now being used to concoct the agent of his death. She prepared the curry, its rich, fragrant aroma filling the small apartment. At the very last moment, just before she took it off the heat, she stirred in the lethal powder, mixing it thoroughly until it disappeared into the thick, dark gravy. She served him dinner with a steady hand and a gentle smile. "I made it extra spicy," she said, "just the way you like it." "It smells wonderful, Mira," he said, his eyes full of sincere appreciation. "Thank you." She watched him take the first bite. She watched him take the second. She watched as he ate the entire bowl, praising her cooking, completely unaware that he was consuming his own death. She ate very little herself, claiming she had had a late lunch. Every spoonful he took was a countdown, every compliment a fresh layer of horror on the crime she was committing. She felt no panic, no remorse, only a cold, detached anticipation. Her gaze was fixed on him, but her mind was a world away, on a beach in California, walking hand in hand with a man made of light and pixels. The poison worked with brutal efficiency. About an hour after dinner, Raj began to complain of nausea and stomach cramps. He paled, a sheen of cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. "That curry might have been a bit too rich for me," he said with a weak laugh, trying to brush it off. Mira feigned concern, rushing to his side, helping him to the sofa. His condition deteriorated rapidly. His breathing became labored, his pulse erratic. He clutched his chest, his face contorted in agony. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with confusion and a dawning terror. He tried to speak, but only a choked gasp escaped his lips. In that final, terrible moment, did he know? Did he look at his wife's calm, watchful face and finally understand the depth of her betrayal? It was a question that would forever remain unanswered. His body convulsed and then he was still. Mira waited a full 10 minutes, her hand on his cooling wrist, making sure his heart had stopped completely. Then, and only then, did the performance of the grieving widow begin. She let out a piercing, hysterical shriek. She threw herself onto his body, wailing his name. She called for an ambulance, her voice a perfect symphony of panic and despair. The neighbors, hearing the commotion, rushed in to find a scene of pure tragedy. A loving wife, hysterical with grief, clinging to the body of her husband, who appeared to have suffered a sudden, tragic heart attack. The initial conclusion of the paramedics and the police supported this narrative. Raj was in his late 30s, but he was slightly overweight and had a family history of heart disease. A sudden cardiac event was plausible, even likely. Mira played her part so convincingly, the inconsolable widow, lost in a fog of shock and sorrow, that no one thought to question the circumstances. Her family and Raj's family surrounded her, their grief a protective shield. She had gotten away with it. In the weeks that followed, Mira was ostensibly free. The obstacle was gone. She had her phone, her privacy, her uninterrupted portal to the world of Alex Rider. But the freedom she had envisioned was a cruel illusion. The silence in the apartment was no longer peaceful. It was a heavy, suffocating shroud. Every corner held a memory of Raji's shoes by the door, his newspaper still folded on the coffee table, the lingering scent of his aftershave in the bathroom. The ghost of the good man she had murdered was a far more powerful and oppressive presence than the living man had ever been. Her fantasy world, which had once been a vibrant sanctuary, now felt hollow and tasteless. Alex's smiling face on her screen could not drown out the memory of Raj's face in his final moments of agony. Her escape had become her prison. She was haunted, not by a spirit, but by the perfect, inescapable clarity of her own actions. The perfect crime began to unravel due to a small, loose thread. Raj's younger brother, a medical student named Rohan. Rohan had idolized his older brother and was devastated by his death. But he was also a man of science, and the suddenness and violence of Raj's heart attack didn't sit right with him. He began asking questions quietly at first. He spoke to the doctor who had signed the death certificate, reviewed the initial reports. He voiced his concerns to a sympathetic police inspector, a young, ambitious detective who felt that closing the case so quickly had been premature. Rohan's persistent, grief-fueled campaign was enough to have Raj's body exhumed for a more thorough autopsy and a full toxicology screening. And it was there, in the cold, sterile environment of the city morgue, that Mira's secret was laid bare. The toxicologists, now looking for more than just common poisons, found what they were looking for: lethal levels of oleandrin, the cardiac glycoside from the Nerium oleander plant. The investigation pivoted instantly from accidental death to homicide. The police descended on the apartment, this time not as sympathetic officials, but as investigators. They searched the house, and in the utility balcony, hidden behind the laundry rack, They found a few dried, forgotten fragments of an oleander leaf. The final, damning piece of evidence was the one that started it all, her phone. The detectives seized it, and with the help of forensic technicians, they unlocked the secret world of Mira's obsession. They saw what Raj had seen. The shrine of photos, the fake account, the desperate, one-sided love letters. But they also found something more. The browser history from the days leading up to Raj's death, a detailed, chilling record of her research into cardiac glycosides, undetectable poisons, and the lethal properties of the common Caner flower. The motive and the method were laid bare. The arrest was quiet. 2 plainclothes officers came to the door. Mira opened it, her face pale and gaunt. When they told her she was under arrest for the murder of her husband, she showed no emotion. No surprise, no denial, no tears. It was as if she had been waiting for them. The fight had gone out of her the moment Raj's heart had stopped. Her trial was a brief, tragic affair. The evidence was overwhelming. Her confession a quiet, monotone recitation of the facts. She was a hollowed-out shell of a woman, her mind finally and irrevocably shattered. She had killed her husband to protect a fantasy, only to have the act of killing destroy the fantasy itself. She had traded a life of quiet stability for a life in a real prison, all for a man on a screen who, to this day, has no idea she ever existed. He was probably on another adventure, smiling for his camera, completely oblivious to the fact that his curated, perfect life had been the catalyst for the complete and utter destruction of another.